10 o'clock. We've had the number of people logging in. Looks like it's slowed down just a little bit. So I think we can go ahead and get started.
Awesome. I want to welcome everybody today. And yes, it is misfortunate that we are doing this via Zoom. I have still heard everybody call it the economic breakfast. We're going to have this economic breakfast, and it's just going to be minus the breakfast, minus the in-person, and hopefully we can get over this and start being able to meet again and in person. So I just want to let you know who I am. Obviously, you guys all know I'm Shauna Ray. I'm the president of the Northern Wasatch Association. And I want to thank you. We have the UtahRealEstate.com as our sponsor today. So we really, really appreciate them. We would like to thank all of you for joining us today. And I'm excited to hear what Jim has to say. So an announcement I want to talk about. For one, we're going to share this on the Facebook page at the end. We are recording it, and there's going to be a PowerPoint presentation that we'll share as well. The affiliates have a health and wellness Zoom event on January 15th at 10 a.m. And we would love for you guys to all join that and help support our affiliates. And you can just register by calling the board or going, I believe you might be able to go to the NWAOR page to get more information on that. And if all of you guys do not feel like you're getting all of all the announcements, all the events, make sure that you're checking your spam mail, because I'm sure that, or make sure that the email that you use every day on a daily basis, the board has that. So that way you can get all the up-to-date, everything that's going on and all the events. And one more thing I would love to ask of all of you is to get involved in a committee, get involved in the board, get involved in the community. So I want to appreciate all of you guys for being here today. I want to give a warm welcome to Mr. Jim Woods. He's been doing this for us for several years, and we are very, very grateful. A little bit about Jim is he joined the Bureau in 1975. He graduated from the University of Utah in finance in 1967 and did graduate work in economics at the University of Utah from 1970 to 1974. From 1975 to 2002, he was a senior research analyst at the Bureau, and since 2002 has served as director. His areas of research specializations are housing, construction, real estate, and economic development. He currently serves as a board member of the State of Utah Revenue Assumptions Working Group, also Salt Lake Home Builders Association, the Salt Lake County Housing Trust Fund, and Neighbor Works Salt Lake City, and is a past president of the Wasatch Front Economic Forum. He has published over 100 articles and studies on topics related to the Utah economy. And I just would like to thank Jim Woods and welcome him to another of our forecast. Want to say breakfast, but it's not. Zoom meetings. Welcome, Jim. Thank you for being here today.
Well, thank you, Shauna and Dan. It's a pleasure to be with you. And I just want to, at the outset, also thank UtahRealEstate.com, as Shauna did. As an economist and researcher on housing, without their data, I'd be flying blind. And as I've said before, there's at least one individual, Robert Schiller, who has won the Nobel Prize based on MLS data. So it's really so important for any analysis of the real estate market. I'm speaking to you today from my office in the Gardner Policy Institute, which is on, we've moved off campus now. We're on South Temple in the old LES Business College venue, and it's a beautiful mansion, and the university put about $10 million into it to renovate it 4 years ago for about 30 economists. Nowadays, there's only 2 of us here. Uh, I come in and the other senior on our staff also comes in. So there's just two of us in this beautiful facility. But the work goes on from home, and we're doing a lot of interesting work for the state government and counties and cities. And this time of year, of course, it's forecast time, and the numbers are in pretty much for the real estate community, and it's been a surprising year, some challenges, but certainly surprising in how it turned out, given what we thought was going to happen in March or April. Let me just start with a little bit of context on Utah. And Dan, if you could go to that first slide. Okay, next. This shows, and this is really underlies where we are in our real estate market. It's Utah's growth. It's just been phenomenal. And these data are for the third quarter of 2010 to the third quarter of 2020. And Utah leads the country by a wide margin, with the exception of Idaho. But we're almost an outlier. And you look at another small state like Nevada, they've had good growth, but they're down at 14.6. South Carolina, we are a bit advantaged because we are smaller. We have about the 30th largest labor market in the country. But even if you look at it in numeric increase, that is absolute increase over this period of time, we rank 9th. So we're in terms of job growth rate, as well as numeric or absolute increase in the number of jobs, Utah just outperforms any other state. Idaho has had a lot of growth in recent years. Boise is booming. Their growth rate is well, particularly on the real estate side, the housing prices, they're closing the gap on the Salt Lake metro area, but still a considerable gap between the prices in Boise versus the median sales price in the Salt Lake metro area. A question comes up on occasion: why is Utah a high growth state? Why are we outperforming even larger states? And our office, we used to some years ago survey firms that located in Utah and those that expanded as well. And the number one reason, and it's most fundamental for employment growth and businesses, is the labor market. That drives most decisions, and Utah has a quality labor force. We have quantity, and we also have relative low costs. Now, our quality by educational attainment, it's not quite as good. We're slipping a little bit there. Even though we're getting improvements in educational attainment, there's some other states that have jumped over Utah, but we still have high quality of labor force. The quantity, we graduate every year because of our age structure of our population. We have a lot of young people entering the labor force each year, and we have a good rate of net in-migration. Now, our net in-migration adds about, depending on the year, 40% of the population growth, whereas in Nevada, Florida, Texas, it's up over 60 and sometimes 70%. So labor advantage and cost too, and this labor costs, and this cuts both ways. I mean, low labor costs are great for attracting businesses to Utah. It's not so great for households. Our typical wage this last year is about 81% of the national average. The national average was 65,000, and we're at about 53,300. So we have a wage rate that's a little bit lower, but because we have large households and we're young, our household income ranks about 11th among all states. But if you do a per capita analysis on that, per capita number of people in a household, we drop back down to about 30th. So we have large households that we've got to spend that pretty high household income on, and it dilutes it a bit. But nevertheless, we've had this really rapid growth, which has been going on really for 2 or 3 generations. Another reason we're a high growth state is because of transportation. Our air, particularly with the new airport now, $3 billion plus expansion, a redevelopment of the airport. Our surface transportation to the coast is overnight. That's not true of, say, we can get to major markets on the West Coast in California, South or Northern California overnight. Denver can't do that. Phoenix can't do that. Reno is a competition for distribution, but our rail service too is really great. And then our sort of ace over the years has been our demographic growth. And even though it's slowed down, we still rank in this same period, 2010 to 2020, Utah ranks #1 in employment or population growth rate with a 15% increase. So when you lead the country in employment growth rate and demographic growth rate, and you have a great transportation infrastructure and a great quality of life, you're going to have a lot of growth, and it puts pressure on the real estate market, on the housing market, and also on our infrastructure and certainly on the educational infrastructure, particularly public education. So those are the challenges that come with growth. And of course, one of those challenges we're going to talk about, it's an opportunity as well as a challenge. It's on housing prices. Next, please. This is just a look at what's happened in the last year. And Utah, again, has performed much better than almost any other state, with the exception of Idaho. This shows the job change by state from September of 19 to September of 2020. You can see that Utah is down about 1% and Idaho 0.5%. Every other state, no state has a positive growth rate. And you see some states like California down 8%, New York down 11%. So it's really been a hit for most of the country. And in Utah, we're approaching levels again of a tight labor market. But the next slide, Dan, this shows that dramatic drop that we had in April. In April alone, we lost over 100,000 jobs. And our forecasts in the spring showed really, we thought by the end of the year, we'd be down maybe as much as a couple of 100,000 jobs. We have 1.5 million jobs in Utah, a little bit more than that. And we dropped by a little over 100,000, 7% in 1 month. We never had anything like that as far as we've got data back to the 30s, and we haven't had anything like that in a single month. But it has come back in rapid order. But as I said, other states have really suffered. The U.S. is expected to be down 6% for the year, 6.4%. What has happened in Utah? We're going to lose a year of job growth. Although we are not below where we were in 2019, we didn't have any growth in 2020. So our 2020 number is going to be pretty much equivalent to 2019. And so from here on out, we lost a year. Now, some states are going to lose 3 or 4 years. So we've been very fortunate. And let's go to the next slide. One of the reasons that we were able to hang on, and of course this benefited all states, is we had a federal stimulus, unlike anything we'd had before. In a matter of a quarter of 3 months, Utah received $12.7 billion in assistance from the federal government. And we just have received some more. I know on the housing side, I'm working with on rental assistance, the state will receive $213 million of the most recent round for rental assistance. So it's been dramatic, and you can see here where that relief, how it's distributed, and it's 22% of our GDP in the second quarter. Utah's GDP is around $200 billion a year. It's been significant. How does that compare to, the last 20 years? And we have a lot of millennials here in our office, and they on occasion bemoan their generation and what they've had to experience between 9/11 and the Great Recession and now the pandemic over the last 10. Every 10 years, we have one of these 100-year events, or black swans, it seems like. And the first one, of course, was set off 19 years ago by 19 men with box cutters. And we ended up with a war in Iraq, which the U.S. has put that cost us about $2 trillion. And then the war on terror has cost $6.4 trillion. So that was a huge hit for the economy. And then the Great Recession. The Great Recession, over 5 years, about $2.3 trillion in assistance from the federal government in the Great Recession, which was 2.3% of GDP. How does that compare to COVID-19? COVID-19, right now we're at 3.4 trillion, which is 3.2% of GDP. But we've done that in 9 months. The 2.3 trillion for the Great Recession was over 5 years. And so, COVID-19 with $3.4 trillion set off by probably a bat in central China, where the virus leaped from a species, most likely a bat, to humans, and has brought the world economy to its knees in the spring of 2020, when it actually shut down. And this is the only event, this pandemic, which is truly global. 9/11 certainly wasn't global. And the Great Recession affected most Western countries, but not global. Whereas this pandemic, hadn't had anything like this in over 100 years, where all over the world, every country and state has been affected by the pandemic. Next. I'm on the Utah Revenue Assumptions Working Group, and we make our forecast a couple times a year. The forecast is used by the legislature as well as the executive branch for their budgeting. And this is the most recent. This is October of this year. And that first line there is important. That shows the 1.4% decline. Look what we have in 2021. We have 3.8%. Now, that's not the most rapid percent increase we've ever had. Back in this heyday of the 70s and the 90s, when Utah was growing rapidly, we had growth rates in 1 year of 7% in the late 70s, and then high 5% in the late 90s. growth is slowing down, but we're still, as I said earlier, we're leading the country in the 3.8% job growth will add almost, you can see there, 60,000 jobs, 58,000 jobs in 2021. So that would be the largest numeric gain ever for the Utah labor market. Our unemployment rate, we've got it going down to 4, which I think is conservative. Where last I looked, we're at 4.1 in December. Taxable retail sales. This is the first time the tax commission gave us these numbers. Everybody, it was sort of a gasp that, and these numbers have held since the summer, that retail sales are up 13.3%. Now the distribution has changed a bit, and that has implications for cities. Right now, about 25% of taxable retail sales are being made at home, home purchases. So that does have implications for cities and their tax revenue. It can be disruptive. For example, if somebody in Box Elder County had been going down to Weber County to the mall to purchase, and now it's decided I'll stay home and have Amazon deliver, the point of sale now becomes up in Brigham City rather than Ogden, which does affect tax revenue. And we're seeing some of that. It's an interesting, we don't have final numbers in yet, so we don't know how much, but it is disruptive a bit. And another aspect of this is VRBO and Airbnb. Those now are the selling rooms, and hotels have seen in, say, Summit County, you see less revenue from a sales tax on hotels, motels, lodging, and the same down in Springdale outside of Zion, where they're losing some tax revenue to VRBO and Airbnb where they're not taxed. Residential construction, we'll talk, I have a slide on that later. We're at a record level statewide. Non-residential construction is trending down a little bit, but that was to be expected. We've been at very high levels, record levels, the last 2 or 3 years. And we'll talk more about home prices. Next. Sales of single-family homes in Davis and Weber counties. The 87, 83 in red, I've tried to put the red where we have red numbers. Those are record years. You can see that this is a record year, just barely, by what, 21 sales. However, for Davis County, it's not a record. The record was back in 2016 at 4760. And for Weber County, the record was 2006, 4209. But if you look at this chart and you see that bulge that we get, that surge in sales in 2000, from 2004 to 2007, it was just really unsustainable, and it's so inflated. And of course we had on the downside, and this is true of Salt Lake County as well, we had 4 years down. You can see from the peak of 8762 for the two counties, drops down to 2010. So we lose about 4 years, and then it takes a good 4 years. In your case, it takes about 5 years to come back. And since it's come back, it's held steady between 8,000 to 9,000 cells. So, you know, if we per capitize this and adjust it for population or household growth. 87, 83 would be above average for the 20-year period, but it wouldn't be near record breaking. It would be well down from 2005 when the population and the household numbers were much lower. So this is a sustainable level. It doesn't infer or imply any sort of unsustainable level like what we had back in '04 to '07. Next. These numbers are really, if you're a home buyer, they're terrifying. I guess if you're a realtor, they have some virtue, but probably some challenges as well. The cumulative days on market for the two counties. I mean, Davis County this is for single family, down to 9 days, and Weber County, 12 days. You can see back at the height of the Great Recession, we're talking 3 months plus. Now it's a couple of weeks, and you're all real familiar. And I hear the anecdotes and also people in our office who are looking to buy about arriving at a open house, and there are a dozen different buyers there, and they make offers above the selling price or the list price, and can't even come close to making a backup offer. So it's a frenzied state. It does cause some concern and worry, and this is really. We never would have expected this back in March or April. I expected that there would be reluctant buyers as well as reluctant sellers. They would want to see the dust settle on COVID-19 and they'd pull back a little. But the Fed's intervention to prevent a deep recession and driving down interest rates to that end has really brought a surge in the market. And another thing that we don't know much about is the in-migration. I hear stories, anecdotes again about a Zoom city and people are moving here. I hear this from both builders and realtors that people are moving here because they can work remotely. They're coming from other areas of state or outside the state. And with that opportunity to work remotely, it's juiced up the demand a bit from outer-staters. I was doing some work out in Roosevelt, out in the Basin. That's a small city. And I interviewed some of the realtors out there, and I got unsolicited. I got that same anecdote from people in Roosevelt, which I thought was really quite remarkable that people were choosing to live in a small city out in the Basin so they could work remotely. Certainly, there's some incentive to move out there if you look at housing prices. If you're in Utah County and you can work remotely and move to Roosevelt and cut your housing prices at least in half, if not 2/3. But anyway, it's a fascinating chart, but it certainly reflects the power of the market right now. Next. Median sales price of a single family home in the two counties. You can see that that 9-year, I think it is 9-year acceleration in housing prices from housing prices finally turned in 2012, first quarter of 2012, and they started up again. And you can see that, I mean, they far surpassed what they were pre-recession. If you just take the last 5 years for these two counties, housing prices are up over 50% in 5 years. And what that means, and true, we've got lower interest rate that helps the buyer, and that's ginned up demand. But if you look at the median sales price of a home in, let's start with Weber County, in 5 years ago was $180,000. The mortgage payment on that $180,000 home was about $1,000. Today it's up to 310. Okay, to buy the median price home today in Weber County, it's going to be over $1,300. So you get about a 35% increase in your mortgage payment. And the same thing happens on Davis County. Of course, you got a higher starting point. It was 241,000 5 years ago. Now it's 380, almost 385,000. That's 140,000 increase in 5 years. And that mortgage payment has gone from basically 1,350 to 1,900. In that case, it's almost a 40% increase in the mortgage payment, even though interest rates have gone down. Now, interest rates that I used in that quick analysis was it was the third quarter of each year, 2015, 2019, 3.95% in 2015, 2.95 in 2020. What happens as the housing price goes up? Of course, the property tax goes up. It's based on the price of the home, as well as private mortgage insurance. I am assuming 3% down payment. So the increase in the mortgage payment, or the increase in the property taxes and the private mortgage insurance, offsets the decline in the interest rate, actually a little bit more than what you would gain by going from 3.95 to 2.95. So the homeowner, the prices, in my view, statewide, we are approaching perilous territory in some markets in terms of prices, excluding more and more people from the opportunity for home ownership. And in another 15 years or so, we'll look, our prices might be more like Seattle's, and Seattle, of course, will continue to advance, and there'll still be a gap. I was asked in a presentation, well, why don't we want to be like Seattle? And as I wanted to say, the person who asked was clearly probably a family man in his mid 40s. And I wanted to ask, well, do you have any children? And I probably, I probably got 3 children. Let's say those children aren't able to get into the housing market. And 40 years from now, when they're in their late 50s, early 60s, they've been paying rent. And in today's terms, about $1,000 for a 2-bedroom apartment. So they're paying $12,000 a month for 40 years. So they put $500,000 into rental housing, and they have nothing to show for it. The advantage of home ownership, I don't think you can overemphasize how important that is for wealth creation for the typical household. Nationally, the wealth of a homeowner averages something like $150,000 in equity. The wealth of a renter is about $4,000. So it's the ticket to wealth for most households. And that's why I just think it's just so important that people can get into home ownership. Next. This slide shows the annual percent increase in single family homes and for the 2 counties. You can see this last year, 2020, Weber County, 14.9% up, and Davis County, 11.6. Salt Lake County was 11.8. The record was back in '06 for 15.7% increase, which was of course unsustainable for Davis County. But again, you can see what this chart beginning in 2012, it's just really robust rates of growth year after year. You got that one exception in 2014, but year after year after year, strong growth. Utah and Davis County, Weber County, if you go back, stretch this chart on the left all the way back to the 50s, you're going to see in every year except for the Great Recession, you're going to see price increases, but they're going to be modest in a lot of those years. They'll be under 5%. What we've had these last 7 or 8, 9 years is really strong growth, where you get in 5 years, you get over 50% increase in housing prices. Income isn't increasing that fast. Income rate is increasing something like at this, maybe a 25% increase over those last 5 years in the average wage at best. This is why I say I think we're entering perilous territory. What do we do about it? The state's involved in efforts to try and address the issue of a housing affordability, cities and counties as well, and nonprofits. And we've got the business community. The chamber is very interested in it. There's some legislation that has been passed in the last couple of years to address the issue, but it is a really difficult issue because so much of it is out of our control, has to do with land prices and construction costs, materials, labor costs. So those are things we don't have much control over, but this gives you an idea of these last 7 or 8 years, how really strong prices have been. Next. And because of those price increases, what we're seeing is on the affordability side is a move not only by home builders, but also by existing home buyers to the condominium market, which is more affordable. It's high density, it's lower priced. Price, I think, is about 75% of what the median sales price of a home is versus the median sales price of a condo or townhome or twin home. In Davis and Weber, we're at 17, 18%, had a real jump this last year to a record level. And in Salt Lake County, it's just been going up steadily for years now because of the affordability issue. And we're going to see more of this. More of your sales are going to be in the high density condominium market. It's just inevitable. It's unfortunately, well, I don't know. It's I look at my generation and it's 2 generations back from maybe some of you that are on the Zoom call. Where I grew up in a detached single family home in Salt Lake City, and condominiums didn't come in until the mid 60s and 70s, and they were a small percentage, and most people were still able to get into detached single family homes. That's becoming less and less likely for a homeowner or a buyer, to be able to get into a detached single family home. I spent the weekend, a couple of hours out in Lehigh, Harriman. Harriman is fastest growing city in the state other than Vineyard, but it's growing because of townhomes, twin homes, condos, and they've just proliferated out there. And it allows opportunity for my granddaughter to get into the housing market. She could not afford to get into detached single family. So that's where the market's headed. Next, Dan. This is on the building side, home building. These are building permits issued in Davis and Weber County. Residential units almost a record year for the combined two counties, within 100 units. As I said earlier, statewide, we're going to have an all-time record, over 30,000 new dwelling units. And the Davis County, you peaked for home building back in the rush and the pre-Great Recession years, and still haven't come back. 2649 this past year, but Weber County set a record with 1,600 plus new home permits. So, and these include townhomes and condominiums and single family. So it's and apartments. So it's all of the new residential units. And you can see, I think, well, let's go to the next slide. And I think housing shortage, and these numbers are statewide numbers. It's real hard to do housing shortage numbers at the county level because you have commuting going on. So you try and do the number of households in Salt Lake County, or say Davis County, and the number of households and how many units were put on, and they don't match up because you got people commuting in from, say, Weber County to Hill Air Force Base. So they live in one county to work in another, and it kind of skews things. So it's best to look at this on the state level. And the housing shortage really began after the Great Recession, when we still had demographic growth, but we didn't have any housing production. And you can see there, in 2010, we had 24,000 new households plus, and we had 9,000 new housing units. Now, in a housing market, demand is driven by new households. Now, some of those new households end up in existing, of course, but those existing, they're moving up, maybe doing new households. So you got to expand the total housing inventory each year by how many new households you have. One way or another, you got to get more households or housing units. And we were short for 8 years. This is true nationally as well, and it's true in most high growth areas. But in the last 3 years, we've actually made some headway where the number of housing units has exceeded the number of new households. And you can see there in 2020, we think we're going to get 30,745 new housing units and 24,300 new households. So that's helped on the shortage. But if you total the cumulative number here up, we'd still be short something like 40,000. And that doesn't mean they're out on the street. It just means we have people doubling up and we have lower vacancy rates, just driven down the vacancy rate. Next slide. Excuse me. My voice is questionable. Increase, we're getting, boy, we're getting near the end, Dan, so hang on. This shows the numeric increase in households. Again, this is what drives housing demand. And you can see in Davis County from 2019 to 2025, almost 15,000, and Weber County, 12,000. Those are growth rates of about a little under 1%, under 2% for Davis, a little over 2% for Weber. Need about 2,300 new housing units a year for the home builders in Davis County to meet what we expect in growth, and need almost that much in Weber County, a couple thousand new households new housing units every year from the home builders to meet the increase in households. Next slide. This is statewide here, and this just shows where that growth's going to be. And you can see that on the young side, we're an aging population, and that 25 to 34 year age group is growing rather slowly compared to the 35 to 44 age group, which is going to go up 11%. And then the next age group, 10 years, up 24%. That's that move up market you'll see as realtors. And then it's the 55 to 64, not too fast, little change there. And then it really picks up for the seniors, 24% increase. And then for over 75, 39% increase. So assisted living is going to be booming. And the 65 to 74 question there is, what did they do? Did they downsize? Did they stay? I'm still in the home I built 45 years ago. Me, my dog, and my wife. We've got 4 bedrooms, but at least right now, for several years, we've had my granddaughter living with us, and we've had grandsons living with us. And so, but right now we're an empty household. But it does change demand. What we're going to see in the market, the starter home market, not growing as rapidly, but on the other end, what will those seniors do in terms of their housing needs? Will they downsize? Will they stay in big homes? We'll see how that plays out, but it is going to affect demand. Next slide. And we'll go through this quickly. This shows we've got more doubling up, and this again affects demand. And this also is really a reflection of affordability. We've got more 25 to 34-year-olds living in with their parents. That's increased significantly from 10.4% to 13.4%. That means an extra 15, 18,000 individuals living with their parents that wouldn't otherwise have been if we had the same 10.4% in 2017. That's the most recent data. It comes from the census. Relatives doubling up. This is a 20% increase. This is statewide again, 200,000 individuals living with their relatives. 20% increase there. Non-related individuals, and this is, I'm not quite sure if these are boarders or if they're just friends, I guess. Non-related individuals doubling up, 46,000 non-related individuals living in family households, 50% increase in 10 years. I would guess that's probably a lot of friends that are living with a household. Multi-generational households, Utah, we're at 10% compared to 8% nationally. In Utah, you've got 60,000 households where grandparents and grandchild live. That doesn't mean that the grandparent is supporting the grandchild, but you just have, in many cases they are, but we have a lot of grandparent-grandchild households. And greater longevity, how that will affect affordability as well as the demand and the overall housing market. Next slide. This slide, each year, this time of year, forecast time, I want to look at what some national organizations, companies, et cetera, have to say about interest rates. And this shows 7, I believe. We got 7 forecasts. The Realtor.com has 3.4% by on the average for 2021 in their mortgage interest rate forecast. That's the highest. The lowest is Fannie Mae at 2.7. Of these seven, the average is 3.04. So we're going to have lower interest rates, and lower interest rates. Um, we have been in lower interest rates now for many years, and there's a lot of discussion in the literature, in the econ literature, about long-term prospects for low interest rates. And there is a consensus sort of moving toward the idea that even though, I mean, any of you who took Econ 101, whenever the federal government ran up their debt, that meant we're going to have higher interest rates, right? I mean, that was just because they're going to compete for debt with the private market. So it's just going to drive up interest rates. Well, the exact opposite has happened. The federal debt has increased, and you're all aware of how much. But on the other hand, interest rates have dropped, and they've been down for years, even though for years now the debt has increased. So we're in new territory, and the consensus is kind of shifting on the meaning of interest rates and the forecast for interest rates. But anyway, for our purposes, for the next year, it's looking really good. And now we'll wrap up with the forecast for Davis and Weber. Again, interest rates will remain low, around 3%. Davis single family sales, I expect, will be up about 5% to 4,800, and Weber single family up 7% to 4,400. Median sales price, Davis, is still going to be strong. I mean, the fundamentals, all of the elements are there. The rapid demographic, we're going to have a good year in job growth. We're going to have net in-migration and low interest rates. I just expect there's going to be continued really serious pressure, upward pressure on Davis and Weber County. 10% increase to 423 for the median sales price for single family. Weber County probably up double digits again. I don't think they'll get to 15% where they were almost in 2020, but it's going to be a strong year there. Affordability, again, we're seeing this in markets along the Wasatch Front where housing is affordable. That's where the demand is really pushing up those prices faster than the overall increase. And last, residential real estate commissions for Davis and Weber County total will jump from 235 million in 2020 to 275 million in 2021. So looks like a very prosperous year. And I wish all of you the best of luck. And again, want to thank one more time UtahRealEstate.com for their data and their generosity in sharing that data. It's really essential for what we know about the market. So thank all of you. I appreciate it. Good to be with you again. I hope to see you in person next year, not talk to my laptop screen. Hopefully. Thanks again.
Hey, Jim, do you have time for just a couple of questions that came up?
Okay.
One question was, about the mortgage payments? It says, what do the mortgage payments look like when we adjust for inflation?
When you adjust for, well, it depends on how you adjust. And if you use a CPI, you're going to, I can't do that calculation in my head over the 5 years. But as I said, we are at 39% increase without adjusting for, over that 5-year period, without adjusting for inflation. If you adjusted for inflation, it would probably be something in the order of, I would guess, about 25% increase rather than close to 40% increase. I do like to look at real price increases on occasion. However, it's hardly, I don't think it's used much in the real estate industry in terms of when you're talking about increases to a buyer and so on. So people mostly, they think of nominal price, what it was when I bought it and what it was now when I sell it, rather than um, adjusting for inflation. Overall, on that point, if you look at, this is statewide for the last generation, the last 25 years, um, housing prices in Utah have increased in nominal terms, not adjusted for inflation, at about 5%. If you adjust for inflation in real terms, they have increased at about 2%. Nationally, the price increases right at about whatever the inflation rate is. So in Utah, we get that bump of real increase in your equity that most states, very few states, enjoy.
Hey, good. Another question about the days on market. Was that active to under contract?
Yeah, those are under contract.
Okay. Somebody asks, should we start to regulate the impact fees and property taxes more?
Say that one more time. I didn't quite hear you.
Should we start to regulate impact fees and property taxes more?
Uh, well, that's an interesting thought, but in Utah, no, we're not. That's never going to happen. Um, there are some things we could do, but it takes really, in terms of intervention and changing the trajectory of the housing price increases, it's going to take really aggressive intervention by the state in some way or form. So we're getting there. We've had some intervention a little bit, but it's really uh, it's really a very difficult, steep mountain to climb. How to change housing price increases, or even just to lessen the growth rate of prices when you have when you're leading the country in employment and demographic growth. Um, so what you're seeing is what I experienced this last weekend when you go to areas where new families live, Lehigh, Harriman, Bluffdale, Saratoga Springs. We went into the Walmart there, and on the way in, I told my daughter, I said, I will be the oldest person in this super center Walmart in Lehigh. Just watch. So we go in, and I wish I had a better some money on that, because there was nothing in there but families with the next oldest person, I think, was probably 50. And that's where the families are going now, and I'm sure you could do the same up in Syracuse, Clinton, um, and areas in Weber County. You go into a super Walmart, and it's going to be all families, and they're living in higher density housing. And so some communities have approved that high density housing to allow for affordability, but the locals do have jurisdiction over that. But the state can certainly influence in a positive way, I think, the issue of density and also NIMBYism. But those are two big issues.
Great. Thanks, Jim. I think we're out of time, so I think we'll wrap it up here. Shauna?
Yes, I just want to say thank you, Jim, so much for your time and for helping us see what 2020 is going to bring us. And I know that I've taken a ton from this today, and I'm sure as everybody else has as well. So thank you so much. Once again, you guys, the slides and this presentation will be available on our website. Correct, Dan? It's going to be on the website?
Yeah, and on our Facebook.
Okay, and the Facebook. So did you have something else to say, Jim?
Nope, thanks.
Okay, thank you. And thank you to utahrealestate.com for being our sponsor today. And you guys all have a great day and stay safe and healthy. Thank you.